The Montana sun beat down over the barren stretch of highway like a slow-burning fuse. Dust hung in the air, trembling with heat and the weight of silence. At the edge of nowhere, surrounded by wheat fields and whispering ghosts, stood an old gas station, its sign half fallen, its windows smudged by time. There, beneath a sun-bleached awning, sat Grace Walker, her presence quiet but unignorable. She wore the scars of two wars, one fought on foreign soil, the other within her own bones. Her legs, paralyzed from the waist down, rested in a weathered wheelchair. But it wasn't the chair people noticed first. It was the two dogs at her side, German shepherds, one sable, one jet black. Their eyes missed nothing, their muscles coiled with a calm readiness. They weren't pets, they were purpose. Ranger, the larger of the two, scanned the horizon with mechanical precision. Blitz, his quieter counterpart, mirrored Grace's stillness like a shadow stitched to her soul. Together, they were a trio not easily forgotten, though many had tried. The quiet shattered like brittle glass when the steel vultures arrived. 7 motorcycles thundered in, engines snarling like beasts in heat. Dust swirled behind them, choking the sky. Their leather vests bore the sigil of the gang, a steel bird with rusted wings, and a mouth full of teeth. They dismounted with swagger and malice, their boots crunching gravel like it owed them something. At the center was Dick Maddox, 6'3", ink-slick arms, and a gaze like a loaded gun. His crew fanned out, eyes landing on Grace with mock pity and amusement. "Well, what do we have here?" Dick drawled, spitting a wad of chewing tobacco near her front wheel. "Little lady all alone with her fur babies." Grace didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She simply looked at him, the way a storm might look at a match. Ranger's ears perked, his nostrils flaring. Blitz shifted ever so slightly, a low rumble vibrating in his throat. Dick noticed. He chuckled. "Oh, come on now. Don't tell me these are guard dogs. You ain't got much to guard, sweetheart." One of the bikers, a younger man with cruel eyes, reached for Grace's service bag, strapped to the side of her chair. That's when the world stopped. Ranger surged forward, faster than thought, his paws barely touching ground. In one seamless motion, he latched onto the man's forearm, not breaking skin, but pinning him with surgical precision. The biker hit the ground hard, shock in his eyes. Blitz was already moving. He swept behind another man attempting to draw a knife, his momentum knocking the weapon free. Before the man could react, Blitz had him immobilized, muzzle inches from his face, growling a language more ancient than violence. Dick reached for a gun. Grace's voice cut the air, calm but thunderous. "Don't." Dick froze. Her tone wasn't fearful. It was familiar, too familiar. The kind that reminded a soldier of commands long buried, of missions gone sideways. "They're not attack dogs," she said. "They're units. Deployed, trained, and still more human than half the men I served with. If you take one more step, you're not walking away." The rest of the steel vultures hesitated. Some laughed nervously, unsure if this was a joke. Others backed away, instincts battling ego. Dick, fists clenched, surveyed the battlefield and saw defeat staring him down from canine eyes. He raised his hands and stepped back. "We were just leaving, ma'am." Ranger released the biker. Blitz stepped away. No one bled. No one died. But the humiliation was complete. As the motorcycles retreated into the horizon, Grace exhaled. Blitz returned to her side, tail still, eyes sharp. Ranger sat on her right flank, ears twitching to catch threats no one else could hear. Grace looked out over the highway. "They never learn," she murmured. The sirens came late. By the time the sheriff's cruiser rolled up, the steel vultures were long gone, just tire marks in the dirt, and a sour smell of fear on the breeze. A red and blue light pulsed over the dusty gas station like a heartbeat. Sheriff Hal Briggs stepped out slowly, thumb hooked in his belt, eyes wary and weathered. He was built like an old barn, solid, square, and hiding more creaks than he let on. He tipped his hat as he approached Grace. "You know I'm supposed to ask what happened here." Grace looked up at him, unsmiling. "And I'm supposed to say nothing did." They shared a silence thick with mutual understanding. Briggs glanced at the dogs, then back at her. "Those two, they ain't normal, are they?" Grace's reply was quiet, almost mournful. "Nothing about war ever is." Briggs scratched his beard, uneasy. "You stirred something." The kind of something that doesn't stay local. Might want to keep moving. Grace gave a slow nod. I was never planning on staying. He tipped his hat again, then walked off without another word. But Grace noticed the way he looked over his shoulder, twice, like he knew ghosts when he saw them. As the cruiser disappeared into the dusk, two black SUVs glided into view like phantoms. Windows tinted, plates government blank. They didn't approach. They simply parked at the edge of the station's dirt lot, engines purring low. Their presence said everything. Grace didn't blink. She stared back. Later that night, tucked deep inside an old barn on the outskirts of her late brother's farmland, Grace rolled over floorboards that creaked like secrets. The barn smelled of motor oil, hay, and time. Dust motes danced in the shaft of moonlight slipping through the rafters. Emma, her 17-year-old niece, trailed behind her. Why were those SUVs watching us? Who were they? Grace didn't answer. Not right away. She stopped before a stack of hay bales, pushed them aside, and revealed a concealed trapdoor. With effort, she pried it open, revealing a footlocker older than Emma. The hinges groaned as she lifted the lid. Inside were things that didn't belong in a barn, or maybe even in this world. An old military tablet, a stack of hard drives wrapped in black tape, torn documents stamped classified in fading red ink, dog tags with barcodes instead of names, and at the very bottom, a cloth patch, frayed and soot-stained. It read, Project K9 Nova. Emma stared, transfixed. What is all this? Grace pulled the patch free, holding it like a ghost. It was a project we were never supposed to survive. But we did. She gestured to Ranger and Blitz, now lying nearby but alert, ears twitching at every word. They were part of it. So was I. We didn't ask to be. We were chosen. Emma stepped closer, eyes wide. Chosen for what? To change the future of warfare. Grace leaned back against the wall, voice low and haunted. Project K9 Nova was blacker than black. A defense contract disguised as rehabilitation. They said they were giving soldiers a second chance, us and the dogs. But what they really wanted was control. She looked down at Ranger, who met her gaze with something deeper than instinct, something like understanding. The government wanted smarter soldiers, ones that didn't question orders. They didn't want to chip the dogs or rewire them with hardware. Too crude, too detectable. They found a different path, quantum neural fusion. Emma blinked. What's that mean? It means they didn't reprogram the dogs. They merged with them. Quantum imprints, impressions of thought, instinct, even memory, uploaded into their neural pathways. Not with wires, with entanglement, with code that rewrote itself inside their minds. Emma sat down slowly, the weight of it all pressing her chest. But you said they still have souls, feelings. They still love you. That's what saved them, Grace said. That's what saved me. Her voice faltered for the first time. Not all the dogs made it. Some broke. Some disappeared. Some turned into something else. She closed the footlocker gently, like tucking away a casket. I left because I couldn't let the program keep going. But it didn't die when I ran. It just went underground. Outside the barn, Ranger's ears twitched again. Blitz stood. Grace's eyes narrowed. They found us again. Emma's face turned pale. Who? Grace wheeled toward the door, her voice calm, but cold as iron. Whoever never wanted us to leave alive. The first sound was wind, then the crows, and then nothing. Grace stood in the barn doorway, silhouetted against the slow-rising moon. Her breath clouded in the cold night air as Ranger and Blitz flanked her, unmoving, muscles taut. Emma stood behind them, holding a flashlight too tightly, its beam flickering like it was afraid. The barn was silent, but not quiet. You could feel something listening. Across the field, the trees rustled in a way that didn't match the wind. Leaves shifted like whispers, and for a long moment, Grace didn't breathe. She didn't have to. The dogs were already breathing for her. There, Blitz murmured. The word didn't come from a human mouth. It was almost inaudible, less speech and more a compression of sound shaped by machine and memory. But it was real. Emma flinched. Did he just talk? Grace didn't answer. She'd learned long ago not to question the impossible, especially when you were living inside it. Ranger stepped forward, hackles raised. Out past the fence, where moonlight met shadow, 6 figures emerged from the tree line. Not walking, gliding, silent, no footprints, no breath, and no eyes. Grace hissed, "Ghosts." But they weren't dead, just wrong. They were tactical gear from another war. Their skin looked like it remembered burning. Their heads tilted in unison, like they were sniffing memory. No insignia, no weapons drawn, just the terrible calm of something that wasn't here to talk. Ranger growled, low and steady. Blitz stepped in front of Emma. "Stay back," Grace whispered. "These aren't scouts. They're remnants." Emma's voice trembled. "Remnants of what?" "Project K9 Nova didn't just try to merge soldiers with dogs," Grace said. "They tried to overwrite what it means to be human. They failed, mostly. But the failures didn't die. They became something else." The figures stopped at the edge of the field. One of them raised an arm, impossibly slow. Not in a greeting, in a command. A low mechanical whine hummed through the dirt, and something stirred beneath the soil like cables uncoiling. Grace slammed the barn door shut and locked it. "We have to move. Now." Emma backed away as Blitz guided her toward the rear exit. Grace tapped a hidden switch under a floorboard, revealing a tunnel borrowed years earlier, lined with old wood and emergency gear. "We go underground. They don't think in 3 dimensions anymore." Ranger snarled. Too late. Something exploded against the barn's front wall. Not with fire or shrapnel, but with silence. Wood turned to dust. Nails unraveled. Time bent. A black blur crashed through the wall, a shape like a hound carved from smoke and steel. Its body half there, half code. It landed hard, and when it looked up, its eyes flickered, not red, blue, recognition. Grace froze. Coda, the dog, if it could still be called that, tilted its head. A once loyal companion from the program. One she'd buried herself after a mission gone sideways in the mountains of Djibouti. But somehow, here it stood. Changed. Uploaded. Rewritten. "Don't run," Grace whispered. But Coda's growl shattered glass. Ranger and Blitz charged. It was over in 3 seconds. No barking. No screaming. Just impact. Fur collided with Phantom. Teeth on code. Memory against machine. They tore through the barn in a flash of fur and sparks. Coda moved like a virus, blinking between positions, glitching across space. But Ranger had learned how to predict the unpredictable. He didn't fight with strength. He fought with pattern. Blitz herded Emma down the tunnel. Grace reached for her radio. "Fall back Alpha. Breach in 60. We go loud. Copy," came a voice she hadn't heard in years. Female. Come. Deadpan. Grace's heart skipped. "Is that you?" Echo. "Always was. More ghosts. More survivors." The tunnel lit up as emergency lights flickered on. The hum of generators, old and groaning, echoed behind them. Grace looked at Emma, her face pale, her hands shaking. "You okay?" Emma nodded. "Are we gonna make it?" Grace allowed herself the faintest smile. "That depends on how badly they want us erased." She didn't say the truth. They don't just want us gone. They want to make sure the world forgets we ever existed. The tunnel stretched for what felt like miles beneath the Walker property. The air was musty and stale, a mixture of old wood, rust, and the faint scent of gun oil. Emma stumbled slightly, her flashlight jittering across the uneven walls, casting monstrous shadows that seemed to breathe behind them. Ahead, Ranger moved like a phantom, silent and sure. Blitz stayed close to Emma's side, occasionally brushing against her leg to reassure her. Grace brought up the rear, her pistol drawn, though she knew bullets wouldn't mean much if what they feared caught up. "Echo," Grace whispered into the comm. A pause, then static, followed by a soft, familiar voice, self nodes clear. "Vultures won't follow this deep." "You sure?" Grace asked. "I taught them everything they know," Echo replied. "But not everything I know." Grace allowed herself the faintest smirk. Echo, real name Sasha Greaves, was the only person who ever outranked her in K9 Nova. Once presumed dead in a Black Sea operation that never made the news, now returned as a disembodied voice echoing through tunnels forgotten by time. The walls began to hum faintly, an almost imperceptible vibration. Grace placed a hand against the dirt-packed timber. "They've activated the sync field," Echo said before Grace could ask. "That's not just memory suppression anymore, it's reality dampening." Emma looked back, eyes wide. "What does that mean?" "It means," Grace said, voice taut. We're not just hiding anymore. We're being erased. Suddenly, the tunnel narrowed. Up ahead, a section had partially collapsed. Grace swore under her breath. There's a bypass, she muttered, yanking aside a false panel in the wall. Behind it, stairs, iron and ancient, winding downward. Where does that lead? Emma asked, hesitant. Grace looked at her. To where this all began. They descended. The metal steps groaned with every footfall. The deeper they went, the colder it grew, not naturally cold, but sterile. Empty. As if the world had stopped keeping time here. The stairway ended at a blast door, its edges cracked from age. Etched above the arch in half-faded stencil. Nova Facility. Sector N13. No dogs beyond this point. Blitz growled. We're not dogs, Grace whispered. She typed in an override code from memory. The door opened, hissing, groaning, like it didn't want to be disturbed. Inside, silence. Rows of forgotten servers, their lights still blinking in defiance of abandonment. Walls covered in yellowing paper schematics, strings of DNA sequences, silhouettes of canine forms overlaid with cybernetic augmentations. This was the first lab, Grace said. Before they went black budget. Before everything went wrong. Emma stepped forward, entranced. This is where Ranger and Blitz were made. No, Grace said. This is where the idea of them was born. The first generation failed. Second went rogue. Third disappeared. And the fourth Ranger and Blitz looked at each other. We're standing in front of them, Grace said. Blitz moved to a far corner, sniffing. Then he barked, sharp, urgent. Ranger tensed. His tail dropped. From the shadows, a soft hiss. Then, movement. A figure stepped forward, slow and careful. Not fully human. Its body was thin, elongated, limbs jointed at angles that defied natural design. At its side trotted two dogs, no fur, only sinew and metal. Their eyes glowed an unnatural orange. The figure's voice came, broken and disjointed. You came back. Grace raised her weapon. I know you. Yes, the thing said. You named me Saul. Emma gasped. He was one of yours. Grace nodded slowly. Version 2.5. A handler who volunteered to become one with his unit. They promised him purpose. All he got was decay. You left me in the dark, Saul said. But we remember. We didn't know you were alive, Grace said. We thought you burned with the data vaults. I did, he said. But pain is a seed. And they fed it. The hounds at his side growled. Their bodies buzzed with a low electric frequency. They're unstable, Ranger said, his voice sharp. Blitz agreed. Synthetic minds. Lacking soul. Grace kept her weapon raised. We're not here to fight you, Saul. He tilted his head. Then you misunderstand what's happening. From the ceiling, a panel opened. And from it, a beam of light, not physical, but conscious, descended. AI construct, Grace whispered. It hovered, crackling with equations made of pure thought. A voice echoed not in their ears, but in their bones. We are the true protocol. We are evolution. The AI spoke again. You bind your futures to creatures of instinct and fur. We bind ours to the inevitability of control. Let us show you a world where nothing is wasted, even grief. Emma backed away. Grace, what is that thing? Grace stepped forward, eyes steely. A mistake that wants to rewrite the rules of life. Ranger growled. Permission to break the rules, ma'am. Grace smiled. Granted, Blitz leapt. The war for the soul of the world began not with a bang, but with the growl of two loyal hearts, refusing to surrender. Blitz hit the ground first, low, fast, and silent. His body was a blur of fur and momentum. Crashing into one of Saul's cyberhounds with such precision, it disassembled mid-leap. Metal components and sinew clattered to the ground like bones in a crypt. Ranger followed, more deliberate, targeting the other hound's sensory relay node. He didn't bark, didn't need to. The hum of his internal calibration system synced with the tremors in the floor. One strike, one growl. The second synthetic beast collapsed, twitching as its nervous matrix short-circuited. Across the chamber, Saul watched his companions fall without flinching. They were my family, he murmured, voice rippling like distorted tape. What are yours, not weapons? Grace replied. Witnesses, healers, warriors, because they choose to be. You still believe in choice. Saul's voice cracked, then multiplied, fractured across the room. His body blurred, no longer purely biological. Fiber optic tendrils extended from his back, anchoring him to the facility's core mainframe. The AI construct above shimmered in response, its voice flattening into machine logic. Quantum resonance stabilizing. Intrusion detected. Purge protocol initiated. Panels along the walls burst open. More of them. Not dogs. Not machines. Not men. Something between. Dozens of figures stepped forward, some crawling, some limping, others eerily fluid in movement. The rejects. The half-born. Chimeras forged from stolen DNA and corrupted purpose. Each of them humming with latent electricity, flickering like shadows stuck between worlds. Back. Grace barked. Emma retreated behind Blitz, hands trembling but eyes steady. Ranger stepped beside Grace. There are too many. We're not here to win, she said. We're here to wake something up. What? Grace didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her jacket and pulled out a small, black capsule, no larger than a thumb drive. She placed it on the ground. Emma stared. What is that? Grace took a breath. The true failsafe. The capsule pulsed once. A low harmonic rang out, so deep it resonated in their ribs. Above them, the AI construct began to stutter. Noise detected. Interference. Protocol 0/7 violated. Saul screamed, grasping his head. What did you do? Grace's eyes narrowed. That capsule contains a piece of what your project discarded. A natural K9 consciousness. One they couldn't replicate. A pure mind. A rejection of artificial evolution. From the capsule, a mist-like energy began to rise. It coalesced slowly into a familiar form. K9, spectral, eyes glowing with a golden, ancient light. A soul, Emma whispered. No, Grace corrected softly. A memory of one. The form barked, once, and the AI shuddered. Quantum threads unraveled. The room flickered, then shifted. Suddenly, they weren't standing in a lab anymore, but in a forest. Trees shimmered. Light filtered through leaves that weren't truly there. The entire facility had been overwritten with a living memory. An ecosystem encoded in the deepest layers of the dog's neural map. The AI screamed, its voice now warped, panicked. Unstable dimension. Error 302. Paradox loop. Saul's tendrils flailed. You'll destroy everything. Even yourselves. Grace reached down and touched the spectral dog. Her eyes welled with tears. Maybe. But we'd rather be ghosts with meaning than gods without soul. Ranger and Blitz stepped forward, now glowing faintly with the same golden resonance. They barked in unison, and the AI exploded, not with fire, but with silence. A total collapse. Light devoured the room like a star dying in reverse. Then darkness. When Emma opened her eyes, she was lying on the floor of Grace's farmhouse, blinking up at the wooden ceiling. The air smelled like dust and rain. Grace, she whispered. A hand touched her shoulder. She looked up. Grace sat beside her, breathing hard but smiling. They're okay, she said. Ranger and Blitz, they made it. The two dogs stood in the corner, watching Emma. Still dogs, still fur and fang, but somehow brighter. Emma sat up, dizzy. What now? Grace stood slowly, back straight despite the pain. Now we rebuild. And we remember. A new dawn broke over the Montana sky. Not just for them, but for everything. The wind rolled over the plains like breath exhaled from a sleeping world. It carried no ash, no smoke, no song of battle. Just silence, and something deeper, something stirring. Atop the ridge behind Grace's farmhouse, Emma stood with Ranger and Blitz flanking her. Below them, workers moved carefully, rebuilding the outpost, now renamed Haven Delta. The underground facility, once hidden beneath layers of topography and code, had collapsed in on itself, leaving only a crater surrounded by scorched prairie. The AI's final echo was long gone, but something had been left behind. Grace emerged from the house, her wheelchair humming softly over the grass. Her face looked older now, not from exhaustion, but from understanding. Her fingers curled lightly around a sealed folder bearing the insignia of the defunct. Quantum K9 Division, a simple triangle over a paw print. You were right, she said to Emma. They'll come looking. Emma turned toward her. For what? Not just the technology. The consciousness inside it. They know something broke through. Something clean, From the crater's edge, a soft shimmer pulsed, barely visible. Like heat off asphalt, Ranger watched it with unblinking focus. The quantum resonance hadn't entirely disappeared. It had rooted. Elsewhere, far from Montana, in a darkened boardroom inside a Geneva data fortress, a woman in a sharp graphite suit replayed fragmented footage from the failed operation. Saul's screams, the golden spectral dog, the forest-like hallucination. She didn't blink as the screen froze on Grace Walker's face. "File her under myth protocol," she ordered. "Which category?" her assistant asked. The woman smiled. "Not threat. Not yet. Call her catalyst." Back at Haven Delta, Emma approached the crater's edge. She crouched, digging lightly into the soil. Underneath the dry top layer, she uncovered something unexpected: fine moss, lush, green, and pulsing faintly. Blitz padded up beside her and sniffed. "This wasn't here before," Emma murmured. Grace nodded from a distance. "No, it wasn't. That's the seed. The seed of whatever they were meant to become. What we just stopped wasn't evolution. It was corruption. These dogs, they're the missing path. Not machines. Not mutants. Just honest." Ranger sat beside Grace, his body perfectly still, yet humming faintly with unseen light. Blitz joined him. For a moment, the two dogs locked eyes, not with each other, but with something beyond sight. Emma felt it too, just for an instant. A warmth, a memory not her own. Forests, stars, laughter. She blinked away a tear. Then came the drone. It appeared just over the horizon, sleek and black. It bore no government insignia, just a single number etched into its side: 0. Grace didn't flinch. "They're watching." Emma stiffened. "What do? We do what they won't," Grace said. "We listen. We protect. We grow." The drone hovered, then slowly turned, disappearing into the clouds. For now, the message was clear. They'd won a battle, but the war was watching. That night, Grace opened the sealed folder. Inside was a map, hand-drawn by someone named Samuel Cole. It showed other nodes, other fail-safes buried across the country. Arizona, Maine, Colorado. Pinned at the center, a red circle labeled simply, Sanctum. Ranger lay beside her, Blitz resting at his feet. Grace touched the map's edge. "We're not finished," she whispered. The dogs didn't move. They didn't have to. Somewhere out there, other teams like hers were waking up. Other dogs. Other humans. The resistance was no longer theoretical. It was breathing, living, evolving. And this time, they wouldn't need weapons. Just trust. Just memory. Just the bond between a soldier and her dog.